On March 27th, 1988, World Championship Wrestling put on the first ever Clash of Champions special at the Greensboro Memorial Coliseum. And even though they didn't have a totally packed house, it was a raucous atmosphere. Sting and Ric Flair going 45 minutes to a time limit draw, and other great matches taking place. Midnight Express and Fantastics, and so many layered stories taking place in the historic Greensboro Memorial Coliseum. And meanwhile, over on this side, the World Wrestling Federation was putting on WrestleMania 4, where everybody got on the floor, did the goddamn dinosaur, and the 45-minute time limit draw paled in comparison to the fact that the tournament over here for WrestleMania 4 is still going on in some alternate universe. Even though Randy Savage did win the World Wrestling Federation Championship of the world, that's kind of redundant, and he was always better than Hulk Hogan, or Hollywood Hulk Hogan, or any incarnation of Hulk Hogan. Should have been a champion a hell of a lot longer than just over one goddamn year. 1 year later, after going head-to-head in various markets, and Ted Turner having to get involved and basically save Jim Crockett from going bankrupt, he says, I'm going to bring back professional wrestling to TBS, and we're going to make our own promotion with blackjack and hookers. And yeah, Ted Turner, playing with his bathtub toys, like in that Family Guy episode. Now you can't unsee it, but the whole point is 1 year later, Ted Turner in charge. This is going to go great. The New Orleans Superdome was the home for Clash of Champions 6. And George Scott booked it so goddamn badly, they had 5,300 people in a 75,000 seat arena, stadium, whatever the fuck you want to call it. It was cavernous. Goddamn, even 20,000 people would have been better than 5,300. And then you had WrestleMania 5, where the World Wrestling Federation was still alive. Hulk Hogan causing the Mega Powers to explode because he had lust in his eyes for Elizabeth. Goddamn, WrestleMania 5 doing so goddamn well. And then you had Clash of Champions 6 over here. And let's talk about all that history. I'm John Renton with the retro view of NWA WCW Clash of Champions 6. Yes, from the New Orleans Superdome. And where to start with this goddamn thing? One, matches were cut from the original broadcast for the WWE Network / Peacock, setting, whatever. And taking a look at the card, really outside of Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat being the main event, and the opening match with the Samoan Twat team, I think that's what they were called, and the Midnight Express. The rest of the card was not good. Not good at all. In fact, it's amazing to just see how WCW fell, even though Dusty, yes, had some ideas that didn't ultimately work out, turning the Road Warriors heel and all that, and just all that history has been talked about in shoot interviews and on Jim Cornette's podcast. There are going to be references to those particular podcasts because Cornette talked about various things and hating George Scott, and you can see with this event why he did. So let's talk about some facts and figures. So one, the max capacity for this particular stadium was 78,000. They had 5,300 fans because George Scott's a fucking idiot. So Clash of Champions won on March 27, 1988. 6,000 fans, Greensboro Memorial Coliseum, Greensboro, North Carolina. And look, let's be honest. With how big that particular, venue is, if they hadn't advertised it as TV, more people might have shown up, and then less people would have watched it on TV, and it was a hell of a goddamn ratings boost. And you had Sting versus Ric Flair. You had the Midnight versus the Fantastics. You had other matches that really were inspired, and it was a hell of an atmosphere. Even though Greensboro, that Coliseum held a lot more than 6,000, they still made a lot of goddamn noise. They were packed in. They were really cheering tremendously. And then Clash 2, Electric Boogaloo on June 8th, 1988. 2,400 fans, Miami, Florida, the James L. Knight Center. They just continued to roll. It obviously wasn't nearly as big as Greensboro, but at least, in Miami, Championship Wrestling from Florida, still some history there. And then you had Clash 3, which was September 27th, 1988. 3,700 fans, Albany, Georgia, Albany Civic Center. And that was the last Clash under the Jim Crockett Promotions, umbrella, Ella, A. And then Clash 4 that, had some great stuff as well. I recently retro-viewed that. That was the Seasons Beatings one. That was December 7th, 1988. 8,000 fans at the Chattanooga, Tennessee UTC Arena. I don't know why I say it like that. Clash 5, which took place just before Chi-Town Rumble on February 15th, 1989. The Clash, no, not the band The Clash, by the way. That was 5,000 fans in Cleveland, Ohio. because they probably smell like that at the Cleveland Convention Center. Sorry to anybody in Cleveland. I really am. But that was just a way to hype up Chi-Town Rumble. And then we go to Clash 7, which was... That was the Fort Bragg one that Cornette talked about. That was at the... Let's see, the Ritz Epps Fitness Center, I believe, is what it was. Or, Complex or Express or whatever it was. And there was like a tag team tournament. There was Luger turning heel. I believe he turned heel here. And there was just Flair, coming back. He was going to be coming back pretty soon to face off against Terry Funk at Great American Bash 1989. They had 3,000 fans there, and apparently, I believe that was the one Cornette talked about where the walls were dripping with perspiration because it was really, really hot. Clash 8, I believe this was Fall Brawl. That was September 12th, 1989. 2,600 fans. Columbia, South Carolina. Columbia Civic Center, something I'm not really sure what the particular venue was or what it's called now. But okay, South Carolina. Some good history. Clash 9, that was the I Quit match between Flair and Terry Funk. 4,000 fans. Troy, New York. Bit of an odd choice for a clash. And the Houston Fieldhouse. Houston Fieldhouse in Troy, New York. I don't think anybody knew how geography worked. But that being said, you had some history there. Then you had Clash 10. That was in February of 1990, I believe, 8 to 10 days before Wrestle War 90, where Flair was going to drop the title to Sting. And then Doug Dillinger pulled him off of that goddamn cage, and he blew out his ACL. Now, honestly, it was probably ready to go anyway, and God forbid if he had blown out his ACL at Wrestle War, that would have been terrible. It was terrible anyway, and he came back pretty quickly. But 3,000 fans, Corpus Christi, that noted city that never really had great crowds. The Memorial Coliseum. That being said, they were pretty up for that. If I remember right, I think there was some kind of cage match. I think Arn and Flair were involved, or Arn and somebody was involved. I think Buzz Sawyer might have been involved as well. The whole point, and I might be mixing that up with the February one, but what was good about that is it was historic, so that's just basically the history of the Clash of Champions leading up before and after that. So now, JR and Michael Hayes welcome us, and I'm going to say Michael Hayes is a great talker, one of the best talkers in at least the last 40 or so years. He was also fucking dreadful on commentary here. If you thought heel JBL was bad, if you thought Jesse Ventura going way off the rails was bad, if you thought Corey Graves was bad, you ain't seen nothing yet. Michael Hayes was dreadful here. There was a meeting where Jim Herd basically addressed a whole bunch of wrestling people that he had no business being anywhere in the same room or zip code with. Fuck Jim Herd. I'm sorry that he's still alive. But you had Lou Thez. You had noted Starrcade 83 main event crippler Gene Knitsky, who I know is a former NWA champion and a great wrestler. He also nearly ruined the Starrcade 83 main event. And then you had Sam Muchnick, who legendary St. Louis promoter, as I said, Lou Thez, Pat O'Connor, Buddy Rogers, and Terry Funk. Fuck stupid Jim Herd. And then they do the sense score with the clips and everything. National anthem plays. Gary Michael Capetta, world's most dangerous ring announcer, welcomes us. And some matches work up in the network version. And really, some of these matches will not take very long to talk about. And I'm not going to get into huge detail about the main event either because, one, Flair and Steamboat went 55 minutes. It would take forever. But the Samoan SWAT team of Samu and Fatu, yes, the future Rikishi actually competed in WCW, and a lot of people forget that, with Paulie Dangerously against the Midnight Express, Stan Lane and Beautiful Bobby Eaton, Sweet Stan Lane, or Beautiful Bobby and Sweet Stan, the Midnight Express. Sorry, I mixed that up. With Jim Cornette, and still they were doing the Jim Cornette, Paul E. Dangerously feud, even though the Midnight thing had just been totally torpedoed, because people were idiots booking that thing. The crowd, even though they were trying to make a lot of noise, is 5,300 people. And even if you try to drop curtains in the top part or whatever, you're still trying to keep, people in the lower bowl loud. You can't, as Cornette said in something, you can't pipe and drape the Superdome. Not something that big. A 20,000, 25,000 seat arena, you could do. Not 78,000. Hayes was just very super annoying on commentary and would get only worse as the show went on. Eaton sold great here. There was a good pace to this. I really liked this. Of course, they had to sell the Samoan SWAT team a little bit too much, even though they were tough and the Midnight were baby faces at this point. Nerve hold city. A lot of nerve holds in this. Cornette and Dangerously get involved. There's the rocket launcher. Eaton has one of the Samoans covered. And then the other Samoan, I can't remember which one it was, hits Eaton with Paul E's brick of a phone, and the Samoan SWAT team get the victory. And then Cornette had talked about how he went back to the hotel to watch Flair and Steamboat because he just wanted to get the fuck out of there because they were miserable. And I don't blame them, even though they were on guaranteed money. I mean, that company was being run like shit. And then the Great Muta with Gary Hart against Steve Casey. And Steve Casey had a great look. He looked like a discount Lex Luger. And, you know, this match might have been fine if it had gone about 5 minutes. And I know I'm probably not that familiar with Steve Casey, so maybe there was a reason why it went that way, but it shouldn't have gone 10 minutes given what they did in the beginning. Now, seeing Muta, Great Muta, Jushin Thunder Liger were guys that got me into Japanese wrestling because of my age, the tape trading that some people I knew did. And it was just, seeing Muta was so cool because he had the face paint, he had the mist, and also kind of funny going back to the Battle of the Belt specials, you know, that Championship Wrestling from Florida did after Eddie Graham passed away. Seeing Muta as the White Ninja when he was on excursion was really cool to see as well. They should have gone about 5 minutes, and that is because Casey got the mist almost instantly, and then the match went like almost 10 minutes, and that was pretty ridiculous. It's a showcase for Muta, and had he done his move, and I'm not saying bang, 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 get it done in 2 minutes, Casey could have had an eventual little comeback, but to me, it was given too much time and was ridiculous. Casey stopped selling the mist after a while. I mean, it's not like he got water in the eyes or whatever. I don't know. This just kind of bothered me. Whatever happened to Steve Casey? Genuine question. Muta hits a dive, hits a handspring elbow on the outside, and eventually hits a moonsault 1, 2, 3. But this took twice as long as it needed to. Wrestle War 89 plug. I believe I've already retro-reviewed that. You can check that out on the playlist, the Old School Wrestling Reviews playlist. JYD then has the New Orleans jazz band play him to the ring, marching band, whatever. As JYD with, taking on one of his biggest rivals in Mid-South Wrestling, in the entire history of that particular promotion that had only been dead for just about 2 years by this point, taking on Butch Reed. With Hiro Matsuda in his corner. Remember when they made Hiro Matsuda a manager and it didn't work? Yeah. Hiro Matsuda managing Butch Reed. Not exactly sure I understand why. So, all the history from their Mid-South days, you're selling wolf tickets, crying wolf about it. And good old Ernie Ladd stuff and just Butch Reed and just all that stuff. Butch Reed, you've been stealing from Mid-South Wrestling. Love Ernie Ladd. I wish Ernie Ladd had been on this show because he would have made it better, and he also had a history in New Orleans wrestling. No one was here to see this, and even though it was kind of cool that they were going back to history, referee Teddy Long, more on him here in a bit, neither guy could move. Butch Reed could move a little bit better. JYD was never that great in the ring, but he could get by because of physical charisma and the fact that people loved him. But he had the bad personal habits. It was talked about on Dark Side of the Ring. He was still a massive superstar, not just for black wrestlers, but wrestling in general. Huge. Mid-South Wrestling, he was a goddamn, entity. He was a legend unto himself, or whatever that phrase is. He was exactly what you would want to push. Then he got into the bad personal habits, and the stuff in WWF didn't work out. Even though Vince tried for a while. Gave him an Intercontinental Championship match against Greg Valentine. Put him against Terry Funk when Terry Funk had his sojourn up there the first time. Chinlock City here, and eventually, this was sloppy. We get a collision where Butch hits Hiro Matsuda, and Hiro takes a Gary Hart-style bump. But then again, Hiro, I think, was approaching death at that point. And JYD gets the victory, and this was bad. This was really bad. So here are the matches that were cut. Bob Orton with Gary Hart in his corner against Dick Murdoch, and it was 33 seconds apparently. And I know they had a rematch, I believe, at Wrestle War. It was a bull rope match, which was certainly something. And then you had Rotunda and Williams against the Road Warriors for the NWA Tag Team Championships. And this is when the Road Warriors they lost the titles because they did a fluky switch thing. Because they had turned heel, beating up the Midnight Express in New Orleans late October. Because Dusty needed a new heel team. Because Jim Crockett didn't give Arn and Tully the proper money or the proper payouts for stuff, reportedly. Covering my ass here. But that's what Arn and Tully have said. And then the Road Warriors are heels. But then after Dusty gets fired as Booker in late 88 and wrestles a little bit longer and then goes and tries to run his own promotion in Florida, now the Road Warriors are heels, but they're still being cheered because nobody wanted to boo the Road Warriors. So they decided to do a tag title switch with a fluky finish, a.k.a. Teddy Long becoming a crooked referee for no goddamn reason and doing a fast count, which would actually lead to him being fired as a referee and then becoming a manager. And Teddy Long is a great talker, so, I mean, it worked out in the end. I didn't think he was a bad referee either. But also, so that's how they switched the tag titles. Then you had Ranger Ross beat the Iron Sheik via disqualification. Ranger Ross. So, let's get to Eddie Gilbert and Rick Steiner against, or with Missy High, rather, against two more members of the Varsity Club, Kevin Sullivan and Dangerous Dan Spivey. Before we saw the giant throbbing vein inside of his head on Dark Side of the Ring stuff. Yes, the future Waylon Mercy was a member of the Varsity Club. Christ knows why. U.S. Tag Title match, and basically the heels jumpstart. They attack Gilbert. Steiner gets in the ring. Big old fracas. And then, basically the giant, overused Gucci purse. I believe that's what it said of Missy Hyatt got used. It's a Gucci purse. I know, I'm having fun. Slammed in the face. Missy Hyatt's purse got slammed in Kevin Sullivan's face. 1, 2, 3. And then the heels attack afterwards. And so the champs retain. They rushed that because then we got to the main event. Even though there were standby matches, because it was given an hour, 2 out of 3 falls. Standby matches, I'll just say right now, were Sting beating Rip Morgan to retain the TV title. And Luger beating Jack Victory for the U.S., or to retain the U.S. title. And then Luger would go on to Wrestle War and take one of the worst DDTs ever in the history of professional wrestling. Because Luger really didn't know what the fuck he was doing. So, they had Terry Funk on commentary for this, and they had Ric Flair come out, and it was Rick spelled Rick, R-I-C-K, because they didn't respect Flair at all. Good spell check there, Jim Herd, you fucking idiot. Ricky comes out with Little Ricky and Bitchy Bonnie. She is a bitch, and I will continue to say that, because if you hear anything about her in shoot interviews and people that talk about Ricky, they say Ricky was great, Bonnie was a bitch, and Bonnie deserves every bad thing that is said about her and has happened to her, because she thought she was a superstar, and you weren't. You were lucky to be married into wrestling. You didn't deserve to be married into wrestling, you dumb broad. So Steamboat and Rick with a K Flair. And given what Teddy Long said that Rick said about him, yeah, maybe there could be a couple extra Ks there. That being said, 2 out of 3 falls match for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Referee Tommy Young, just before he would suffer his neck injury and be unable to wrestle. And I'm not going to go blow by blow with this, but this was wrestling personified. They did the time limit calls. 5 minutes have gone by, 10 minutes have gone by, 15 minutes have gone by, that kind of stuff. And it was paced well. There was back targeting by Ricky Steamboat throughout this. There was knee targeting by Flair. Heavy chops, great near falls, just reversals. They were beating the shit out of each other. And inside cradle was reversed. Ric Flair took fall 1 with about 20 minutes of time elapsed. I think just under 20 minutes. And then the second follows with some more great action, as you would expect. They paced it well where they slowed it down with some rest holds and everything, some side headlocks and some sleeper holds and chin locks, because Wrestling Bios must be pleased. And then there was back focus. There was a chicken wing submission where Ricky held him up. And considering we were 35 minutes into this match, or close to it, pretty goddamn impressive. He was able to hold up about a 235-pound man like that. And he managed to get Rick to submit. So Ricky got Rick to submit, and there we are. And then Flair targeted the knee in the third fall. We got more back focus. We got some great stuff. It picked up near the end. Some great action. And then the double chicken wing near the ropes. Rick had his foot under the rope, but basically it was a double pin. But Ricky, by that proxy, retained. And then Ricky Steamboat and JR went over all that stuff. Ricky was going to take on our challengers. Then they looked at the footage and he's like, he has a gripe. But JR's like, they'll address this on the future broadcast. And they did. And they had the rematch of Wrestle War. And then Ric Flair won. And then they did the angle with Terry Funk, where the table didn't quite give at all. That being said, good opener and really good main event. It's just a shame nobody was there to fucking see it because George Scott couldn't run a goddamn wrestling promotion to save his life, couldn't book anything. And I think only got lucky because of the great talent that happened to come around in the 70s. I refuse to believe that guy was actually intelligent enough to figure that out on his own. Nevertheless, let me know your thoughts on Clash of Champions 6 in the comments. Please like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.